Today's title and thumbnail are by no means a joke. This is 100% my genuine opinion when it comes down to building and constructing the best possible trigger setup for your AAP-01, whether it be long range build or short range build. Now, during this series, we have been putting together a super long range, or like I guess DMR style carbine kit for an AAP-01 because I intend to take this outdoors and play with it outside. This is one of many videos, so go check out that series. If you're curious for all of the things that I'm putting inside of this AAP-01 so far and in the future, check the description below. It'll have everything written out step by step and all that I'm adding to it in case you choose to follow along. As well, if for some reason you do want to follow along and pick up some of these parts on your own, some of them are purchasable over at Jeff's Airsoft. You can go ahead and check out the link in the description. Also, if you choose to get some of them off of Skirm Shop, USA or Netherlands, I do get a 5% off code. Use code STUPIDAIRSOFT and save yourself some change. Okay, so these parts are the TTI Trigger. The idea behind this is it's going to allow us to adjust the length of our trigger pull so it won't over travel too far backwards when we pull the trigger. This is Jefe's V2 Smooth Pull Trigger Bar. This will decrease resistance from our trigger pull. It's going to cause less resistance because there's less rubbing against the plastic on the inside wall. And then the Jefe's stainless steel trigger spring, which is an increased strength trigger spring, which will increase the strength at which it returns back into its resting state, so it'll allow for faster shots. As you can see with the standard trigger, it's extremely long, right? When we pull the trigger, our brake has a lot of take first, then it breaks, and then our reset is super long. We want to fix that today. So first off, what we're going to do is break into the AAP-01 because all we're going to need is the lower half for today. We'll put the upper half aside. Get some tools out, and why don't we open up some of our parts. So again, we have the stainless steel trigger spring. I have installed one of these in the past from Jeff. He had the original trigger spring, which was silver. This is an upgraded version. This is his red trigger spring, so I'm excited to test this guy out. We have the new smooth pull trigger bar. Pull this guy out of the package. I've installed this as well in a previous AAP-01. I absolutely love this thing. It's super lightweight, super high quality, and it's got a bunch of different changes and upgrades to it from the standard trigger bar, which we'll check out in a moment. And then, of course, the TTI Victor Tactical Trigger. I love this one. I've ran this before in the past too. I haven't installed one on this channel, but I personally really enjoy this one. It's super easy to adjust and edit as well. Look at that thing. It takes away that Glock style safety in the front, so it's just a nice flat panel. And then you use all of your Allen keys and pins to adjust the traveling, which is super easy. I think we'll bring you guys down quite a bit closer, and that should be much easier for you to see all of the things we're going to be doing with the AAP-01. So let's first grab a screwdriver. Now we're just going to work on popping out all of our pins and whatnot. We're going to have to take everything out of here, so it's going to be a little bit of a hectic upgrade. I'm going to first remove the safety, push that guy up and pull this out. If you haven't seen me take all these pieces apart before, we're doing it again. And we'll start to remove these screws, the 3 up in the front. This will allow us to get to the trigger housing. Now, obviously, it's super important to have a optimal trigger. A, it'll allow for quick follow-up shots, but B, a less stiff trigger and a less lengthy trigger pull can also lead to more consistent shots and more accuracy because you have less travel time and less, I guess, squeeze distance, which can also take your shot off target. Next, what we're going to do is attack all of these pins. So we'll work with the back pins first. be careful, this guy's going to be under spring tension. So I'm going to pop pin and pin. Cool. And these should just pop out the opposite side. And then we can go ahead, press this button, and pull the hammer housing out. Be careful, like I said, that guy is going to be under spring tension. I've always found it easiest to go ahead and set the hammer. It's less likely that that spring and piece are going to fly outwards. Now they're released a little bit. Next, we're going to get to this trigger housing spring. And be careful, because you have the spring from your trigger bar. There's a spring in there, and then there's another spring that wraps up and around the pin that sets this lever. So I just keep it kind of a finger on the top. Press this guy out. Pull it out the opposite side. And then this entire unit should come out on its own. Now, we are going to take a look at all the comparisons and whatnot, but the only things that we need to save are the trigger housing, our upgraded bolt release, and then that upgraded spring that we used in the past. Now, I kind of want to take a look at some of the changed parts, see if there's any differences. We'll look at the springs first. Obviously, they should look almost identical. One's just going to be of a higher quality metal and should retain its tension a little bit longer. It does look like the coil, or at least the actual spring, is a little bit thicker maybe, which could also increase the tension. But toss the old spring aside. Let's take a look at our trigger bar. This is the one that has so much different to it. And we're going to go this way. You can see, obviously, there's some cuts out of it, so it makes it nice and light and will reduce friction. There's also some like beveled edges and whatnot too that are going to help reduce friction as well. There's a lot going on in this thing. A lot going on. And also, it's gold. And then, of course, the triggers. I mean, come on. It's time for a metal trigger. A plastic trigger and an AAP is just, it's not the move. So let's toss this aside. Now, I have not installed one of these Victor triggers onto this trigger bar before, so I hope it fits nicely the way that I want it to. What we're going to do is pull these pieces out, and I am going to Loctite the screws in place as well. So it looks like the trigger bar is going to sit in here, just like this. If I can get this to focus. And it's going to be peeking out of that hole. See that one? And we need to take our shorter screw and drop that in the back here. What this is going to do is reduce the amount of reset in the trigger. So we will get a smaller screwdriver. And then some Loctite blue. These parts move around a lot, so you definitely want to make sure you throw a little bit of blue on it, just enough to keep it in place, but so that you can still screw it in and unscrew it as you need. There we go. And we could screw that guy pretty far in for now. Just enough to make it easy for us to install. We'll toss the trigger bar in just like this. And we should have a space for the hole. That's where the pin's going to go. We'll just punch that pin through too. I think we'll go from this side. Make sure it drops in place. And then we'll just flatten it on out. Now what we can always do is loosen that later. We're actually going to tighten that down quite a bit to start off, just to make it easier to install all the hammer parts back into place afterwards. Cool. Okay. Now we can take this screw, and this guy we're going to throw a little Loctite on. And we're going to final adjust this one later on after we install it back into the AAP-01. But we're going to take that Loctite, throw it onto this screw. Again, just enough to keep it in place. And that's going to go straight through the front hole of the trigger. And that will help reduce any extra take up from the trigger after the hammer breaks. And like I said, we'll readjust that afterwards. Now, all we have to do is reinstall all of these parts together. And like we've done a ton of times in the past, the best thing for us to do is to take this spring in this orientation, latch it up at the little nub on the bottom, and then we're going to wrap it around the trigger so that you're sitting like this, and then take that whole mechanism and throw it into the base of the trigger box. With everything squared away and in place, you should be able to just drop it on into the AAP-01. It'll make it easier to hold all of those parts together. And you should notice the spring up at the top on the left and down at the bottom on that nub. Trigger bar should be inside of that bolt release, and there should be an open hole at the base. What we're going to do now is install the trigger bar spring, and it has to sit in this orientation. And we're going to get it on that nub and on that little nub here. So I've always found it easiest to install it onto the trigger first. So we're going to, without dropping it all over the place, we're going to put it on the trigger bar just like this. I did find it was difficult to get it on the trigger bar the last time I did it with the first Jefe spring. Takes a little bit of wearing in. It must be like the coating or something like that. Once it gets on there, it stays on. Now we have to pry up this housing just a tad bit so we can get it onto that little nub. Perfect. And now if you hold everything down in place, there should be tension on that spring. Our best bet is to get a pin through this hole. So we're going to drop that pin down on the right side. Right, we are clear. Yeah, we're clear. Might take a little wiggling around, but you should be able to get that through with just your finger. Perfect. And then next we'll take the hammer block and pull the trigger back to get that trigger bar out of the way. We'll put this guy back in. Should be a nice and smooth fit. Make sure your trigger bar sits on the right side in that space. Bring it on down, push that button, and make sure everything's nice and snug in place. We'll get these other pins in now. The barbell pin at the top, and then the short and stocky pin at the bottom. Okay, we are so close. So close. I'm just going to grab a larger Allen key. We got to get those 3 screws back in now. Drop number 1 into the middle. Can't wait to adjust this and see how fine of a trigger pull we could set it to. It's always the fun part. Things start to come together. Can't wait to paint this whole thing too. It's going to kill some of the nice colors from the upgraded parts, but the red would stand out like a sore thumb in the woods to anyone who wasn't me, because I'm colorblind. And then we just got to put our safety lever back in. These safeties are important. Even if you don't use the safety, it at least keeps dirt and stuff out of all of your fine moving parts. Cool. Okay, so make sure our safety works. That's a good sign. Okay. Okay, now it's for the fun part. Let's adjust this trigger, right? So it's got some Loctite glue on it. It's not totally dried, and that's fine. But you can see all this extra space here, right? When we drop the hammer, it's all set. You see all that extra space to start off with? There's no tension before the hammer breaks. What we want to do is take care of that space first. We get rid of that space. So what we're going to do is very lightly pull down the trigger, and we're going to drop an Allen key in and attack that screw that we put in on the back, and we're just going to back it on out. You can back it out too far, and if you do back it out too far, you're going to be in a position where the hammer never actually resets, and that's not good. But you see how we've shortened that length? We can even go a little bit further, I believe, and that should so much shorter now. Why don't we go even one more turn? See how short that is now? Oh, it's too short, too short. See how it doesn't reset? So we'll give it like a quarter turn. I dropped the hammer too far. That was my problem. I wonder what that was. Might even be able to go a little bit more. Hold on. It's my mistake. That's not bad. Okay. Now what we want to do is, you see where the hammer breaks? You see how much extra travel we have here? We want to shorten that now. And what we're going to do is get to this little screw back in here. I'm going to have to do like a bunch of quarter turns. But if I could drop it on in and just quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, you'll start to see it backing out of the back of the, or the rear of the trigger. I don't know if you can see that screw starting to protrude out the back over there. It's going to reduce our over travel. Now, you can make it easier by drilling a hole up in the front of the grip. It might kill the integrity of it just a little bit, but it does make it a little easier. You can just drop an Allen key straight through, and you don't have to do these like quarter turns. But once it's adjusted, and if you have a little Loctite on there, it shouldn't go anywhere. And I don't see why you'd want to unadjust it, other than the fact that you do have to unscrew these sometimes to get to the internal parts and take the hammer out and stuff like that, because sometimes the trigger bar is so tight on the hammer, it's hard to get it to come out. There's just not enough space. Alright, so now we're going to make sure that we can pull the trigger far enough for the hammer to break, and we can't. So we have to back it this way back a little bit. And we're just going to go back and undo what we did until it breaks. Nope, a little bit more. A little more. A little more. Just have to be able to get that trigger bar to go back far enough. Not yet. It's a tedious process. It's much easier if you have the hole up in the front. There it is. Boom. Okay, so now if you look, right, our initial pull is super short, and then look how much like minimal travel we have backwards. Barely any. I'm going to give us just a little bit more wiggle room so there's less chance of like a misfire. And then we'll even send that guy in another quarter twist. And now we should be able to install it back onto the body kit. Body kit inbound. Let's get that guy on, and we're just going to make sure all of our trigger functions function the way that they're supposed to. Okay, so in semi, obviously, we rack the charging handle with a bolt, and we have that very minimal travel. Still breaks the hammer. Resets just fine. And then if we drop this guy into auto, it should break the hammer, and there should be no reset at all. And everything is installed perfectly correctly. I'm going to stop effing with it just because I want to let that Loctite glue dry before those screws start moving around, because they will, obviously, just because you are literally just pulling on them and tapping them, tapping them, tapping them. But I personally believe there is no more optimal trigger setup than that. It really doesn't get much better than that. I highly recommend these upgrades. I have not used the Jefe Trigger Bar in my past videos or in my past upgrades. It's a totally cool upgrade to add in, but for the long, like I'm talking like the last, since when it released, when TTI released this trigger, I purchased this trigger, and I've almost never ran any other triggers on my AAP-01s. Anytime that I have the ability to get one of these, I get one. Those other upgrades now are just an extra plus. So we're kind of, honestly, I think we're done with the base. I think we're done with the base. Now it's, I might do a couple other things on the inside of here. I haven't decided yet. I might short stroke it a little bit. Not a whole lot, a little bit. It doesn't need to be super quick and snappy just because it is going to be a long-range build, and I want it to be accurate, so it's maybe one shot, two shots at a time. But for follow-up shots, it might be nice. And then maybe a new blowback unit, but I don't know. I might keep with the stock one for now, and then if I need to upgrade down the road, I will. But we are going to be painting this one. I got to figure out a sight that, or a scope that I want to put on here, and anything else that's necessary. But that's the video. Again, thanks for hanging out. I'm loving this series. I absolutely love the AAP-01. It's my second favorite pistol platform, right behind the TP-22. So a series like this is really awesome. So thanks for tuning in always, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.